When you first start to knit, there are going to be some common traps you will need to avoid that lead to errors. However, errors will happen, and whenever a mistake happens, there are always ways to fix it. So let's take a look at some of the errors that you might end up encountering. For example, this swatch here does not necessarily have a big noticeable error. But if you look here at the edge of your knitting, you're going to see that it's a little bumpy. It's almost as if there's a little wrap every other row, versus this swatch where you have a nice smooth chain along the edge. Now this error is easy to avoid. You can avoid it by slipping and not knitting the first or the last stitch of every row. The second problem you might encounter is accidentally purling a few stitches instead of knitting. When this happens, we must unravel the work to get back to that point. Unraveling, however, can be stressful, and it can be hard to put stitches back onto the needle. But there are ways to avoid losing your stitches when having to unravel. You're going, for example, to find the row right below the mistake, come to the edge, and put your needle through the side of every stitch. 1, 2, 3. You see I'm putting it through the side. 4, 5. So every other little side of the V is 1 stitch. 2 of these little V's make 1 stitch. You put your needle through the left one. So skip the right one, go through the left one. Skip and go through the left one. You go through the left side of every stitch and don't skip the last stitch. Make sure this last stitch gets onto the needle as well. No matter how big your work is, you can still do this. Now when you unravel, you will come to that row and all the stitches will be on the needle, and you can pick up exactly where you left off and continue working. So remember how I told you that edge, to make a nice smooth chain edge, you need to slip every first stitch. So here in my unraveling, I picked up 1 stitch too low at the end, so I need to fix that to have the complete row. And now I'm ready to start the next row. So one way to have this nice smooth edge is to always slip the first stitch and then continue working. Getting to the end. These are purl stitches. When you're purling, your yarn needs to be in front of the work. Doing it very slowly, hoping you see how the purl stitch works. Yarn is in front. Now let's accidentally drop a stitch here and keep going. You keep purling. You get to the end of the row. You turn your work and you say, "Oh no, I dropped the stitch. What can I do?" So let's see, what can we do when we catch it right away? Slip the first stitch for that nice smooth edge. 1, 2, 3. Here I come to my dropped stitch. See how you have the stitch and then you have the yarn from the previous rows. That needs to be picked up. How do we pick it up? You can use a crochet hook, but it's very likely that when this happens, you are chatting, you might be working, and not really having all of your tools with you. So what you can do is you can put your needle through the stitch where it's caught, then go to the lowest bridge of thread between the worked stitches and lift it onto the needle here, holding the stitch. Put the stitch in front of it. Now grab the thread of yarn and knit it. Now you have one more from the row above. You're holding the stitch on your needle. You put the needle under the thread bridge, put it up here. Take the dropped stitch, put it in front. Now you take through the stitch, take the yarn from the row below, knit it in. You have a new stitch, put it on the needle, and everything is in good working order now. And you can continue knitting your work to the end of the row. Okay, so that was the dropped stitch problem. If you do not realize what happened early enough, you might get to the end of your work. The easiest way to fix this is with a crochet hook. But again, as a knitter, especially a beginner knitter, you might not have a crochet hook available. So how can you use your knitting needle to fix a dropped stitch when you don't see it right away? You can do what I showed you in the beginning and unravel to that row, but you can also work to try to pick it up like this. You will stretch your work above that stitch to show all the bridges from the rows. You will put your needle into the stitch, and now you will use your needle to put this through the stitch. So you grab it like this and pull it through your stitch. Put the needle again through the front of the stitch so it's not twisted. Find the next bridge. It's right here. Pull it. And then grab it and put it through your stitch. The next one. Pull through your stitch. See, you're knitting it up. Make sure it's not twisted. The next one. grab it, pull it through the stitch. Now when you get to the very top row, the unraveling row, this is where we will need to unravel. But again, you didn't have to unravel all of your work. You only do this very last part. Now, if it's in the middle of your sweater, that would not be a good thing. It's also unlikely to happen because you will want to check your work in every row as you finish. And from this point on, you will just cast off as normal. Let's take a look at this. This looks perfectly fine at first sight, but then you notice there is something different about these stitches and the stitches in the top rows. What you see happening here is twisted stitches. Now I'm going to show you how that happens, and when you see how it happens, you will know how to avoid it. On the purl side, it might happen that when you're purling, your stitches end up twisted because they come to you like this. You put your yarn in front and you try to go through the stitch, but you're actually twisting your stitch. Do you see? They should come like this, and you should be able to knit, leaving the stitch nice and open. But if they come to you like this, and you don't catch it and you don't turn it, you purl through here, and you end up twisting. Do you see how here it twisted? And if you do it right, it doesn't twist it. If it comes to you this way, your yarn is in front, you can come from the back to keep the stitch nice and open and purl. Let's try again. If it comes to you this way, you purl. If you go through the middle, you're going to end up twisting. You see how it twists? But if you come from the back, it will leave it open. If it comes to you this way, you go from the middle back, it leaves it open. How does this happen when you're on the knit side? Let's take a look. If you're on the knit side, your stitches should be coming to you open, like this. If they're not coming to you open like that, if they come to you closed, you have to come from here to knit to keep them open. If they come to you positioned like that, and you go through the middle and you knit, you're going to twist them. When they twist, they do not lay nice and flat. You can see the difference. It kind of works, but it's not laying nice and smooth and flat like it does here. So you always want to make sure your stitches are nice, open, and flat. If they're not, you're probably twisting them. You see here how it ends up twisted? I could go from here and I see it twisted again. If I see that, I return, I check, and I go through the open side of the stitch to avoid twisting it. I hope this helps you not only fix twisted stitches, but to know what is happening when the stitches twist so that you can catch it and avoid it. There are going to be patterns where certain stitches will need to be twisted, and this is the look you will expect. But in general, when you're working on your stockinette stitch, you want it to lay flat, nice and harmonious. All right, there you have it. You know how to make this nice chain edge. You know how to pick up stitches and unravel to a certain row. You know how to pick up a dropped stitch, and you know how to avoid twisted stitches. I hope this is helpful. Happy knitting, and see you soon.